invite Bea Campbell from the Communist Class. 10 minutes.
Can you hear me? No. Right. Brothers and sisters, what I'd like to do now is to consider Trotskyism in the context of the contemporary impact of feminism on revolutionary politics. This might be particularly useful, I hope, for many of you because of the epidemic evacuation of feminists from your particular organisation. But I also want to discuss it in the context of the imperatives of modern European communist strategy. Now, first of all, I'll deal with what I think are two important planks in the elaboration of a revolutionary strategy, which I'll take up from pamphlets written by Comrade Mandel. First is the concept of the Revolutionary Party, and the second is the concept of the revolution itself. Now, the first important thing about defining the Revolutionary Party, according to him, is that it is correct. Correct. And that its correctness is based on the transitional programme, which we've heard references to already. Based on its correctness, there is envisaged a hierarchy of relationships. First, to my second point, is that the Revolutionary Party is comprised of top people who come there, and I'll quote, through a process of individual selection. These people are, again, quote, the best, the most intelligent, the most combative, who, again, quote, conquer, or, again, quote, wrest political leadership of the advanced workers. My third point is that the second layer of these alliances, the material of the alliances, are, as it were, second top. That constituency which Billy Connolly, who you will all know, no doubt, who is the hero of the Scottish proletariat, would call the stupid but savable. These are the troops of the working class. These are the people who staff the organisations of the workers' movement, but who don't actually qualify for the Revolutionary Party. Four, the third layer, is the masses. That's people outside this hall. And it is through the medium of the layer above them, the stupid but savable, that the revolutionaries will communicate with the masses. Now then, Mandel's interpretation of the Trotskyist interpretation, of the Leninist interpretation of the concept of the masses is that they will only become politically activated in a revolutionary sense in the course of periodic struggle, periodic confrontation with capital. This lot, as it happens, haven't got the staying power, and I'm picking this up from his words, which he's written. They haven't got the staying power, and again in Mandel's words, what that lot do is to retreat, quote, into private life, which, of course, as all good Trotskyists, Maoists and Stalinists and Pabloists et al. Know, is not an arena for struggle, is not a political place. They, of course, cannot be revolutionaries because their lives are permeated by bourgeois ideology. Now, the second point, which is the concept of revolution. As we've heard, this is strongly contested, but briefly amounts to a situation of mass upheaval, strikes, and the crucial intervention at the appropriate magic moment of the revolutionary vanguard, which is us inside this hall, or at least some of us inside this hall, based on, of course, the prototype of 1917. Now, what this does, what this model does, is to exclude the notion of process, which communists are attempting, and I use the word attempting as an operative word, to elaborate. Because what is important about this concept is that effectively this notion is excluded from the concept of revolution as cataclysm. In other words, revolution is seen as a classifiable event. Quite explicitly, it is not a process. What I'd like to argue is why these propositions are fundamentally patriarchal and alien to women. Indeed, that women are victimised by this kind of characterisation. First of all, women are, of course, as you all know, backward. Women have been hailed as the most backward section of the working class since that notion was conceived. More important, though, is that the obliteration of a notion of process means that women will be excluded, because we are backward, from that cabal which will conceive of what socialism constitutes. This, in my view, goes directly against the grain of the impact of contemporary feminism. And indeed, the problematic which European Communist parties have attempted to confront, which is how we develop consciousness now. And this is a concept and a problematic which Mandel's interpretation of Trotskyism, of course, explicitly discards. What is also important about it is that it's quite explicitly sexist. Why? Because ultimately it's economistic, because it assumes that the revolution is a confrontation in a certain place between capital and labour. What is excluded is the notion that there are more contradictions than that. That there is a contradiction between men and women which cannot be reduced to the contradiction of class. And if you would like to have this confirmed, read the literature put out by the IMG itself, which says that women's oppression arises, and that's the operative word, arises from capitalism. Any feminist knows that Marx and Engels never argued that the oppression of women arose from capitalism. That contradiction lies in the social relationship between men and women. Now finally, I'd like to make a comment on the way in which the notion of this revolutionary party is sexist. First of all, because it doesn't actually acknowledge the political content of autonomous feminist movements. It doesn't assimilate the political impact of its politics, and also it in fact has a concept of, how can I put it, a male heroism. There's this image of a revolutionary style and a revolutionary party which is malely heroic. Why that is sexist? Because of course it excludes all of those who have premenstrual depression, who failed the 11+, who are old, who have children who cannot be taken to the revolutionary spectacle because they get in the way. Right, and of course that kind of concept throws people like me out for a start. This Trotskyist model ultimately and essentially stands in opposition to the motives of contemporary communism, which are involved in a painful process of trying to eschew the effects of Stalinism. And finally, what I'd like to say is that effectively what this kind of notion does is to essentially exclude women and is essentially inimical to all of the import of the women's movement.